Hey, animal chiropractic friends. This is Dr. Amy Hayek, president and co-founder of Animal Chiropractic Education Source. Veterinarians have historically been the people who've been there to support and help animal populations. They are there to protect those who can't speak for themselves. In the world that they call normal is gone, and they have been regulated to be careful about how they deal with their patients and about how they deal with their clients. They can no longer interact with their clients directly, and they are becoming more separated from those animals as well. Animals are implicated in carrying coronaviruses, which they cannot pass on to humans, but the media is teaching people that because of fear. Veterinarians used to depend on vaccines to bring patients in for that annual exam so that they could then see the animal and advocate for it and help with its health. They wish that animals would come in more often just for regular checkups, because just coming in for that vaccine doesn't give the veterinarian enough time or enough valued ability to take a good look at the animal and make sure that they're seeing all the things that are happening throughout that animal's lives. And yet veterinarians have a difficult time getting animal owners to come in for just the checkup, make sure the teeth are normal, make sure that all the other functions are going on, because they rely so heavily on diagnostic information, blood work and x-rays and things like that. It is difficult for animal owners to be able to afford that. In addition to that, regulations have become a problem for both veterinarians and animal owners, as state regulations, but also individual regulations. Groomers and horse show places and other places where animals and people gather are becoming more and more regulated about how those animals must be not healthy necessarily, but vaccinated and have the appropriate paperwork for those vaccines. The stakes are pretty high. If we keep doing this, if we continue to rely on just the paperwork that says that animal is vaccinated or been seen for those vaccines, is that true health? Does that truly let our populations know that those animals are not sick or injured or ill and need to be advocated for in another way? They still can't speak for themselves. It takes the educated eye of those animal practitioners to be able to take care of them. So we're going to speak today to Dr. Sherri Tenpenny. She is an international speaker and author. She is a board-certified osteopathic medical doctor from Cleveland, Ohio, and she's the founder of Tenpenny Integrative Medical Center, a clinic that specializes in holistic health and healing, including breast thermography, allergy relief, and bioidentical hormones. And she is here to meet with us. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today.
Oh, no, this is good. This is really super good. Just like humans, right? You know, like we walk, remember in Charlie Brown, remember the character Pigpen?
Mm-hmm.
I think that everybody thinks that that's what we are. We're these filthy little, all these bacteria and things like traipsing along behind us. We're just dirty, unless, of course, we're vaccinated.
Right. And that's going to make it
this stuff everywhere because we're like little pig pens and we just spread this stuff everywhere. Not taking into account at all, like your microbiome, your skin microbiome, your intestinal microbiome, your brain. Now they're talking about a brain microbiome.
Sure, absolutely.
Carry around, a couple trillion viruses and bacteria every day. And the only ones that we get all in our knickers in a knot over are this very short list of pathogens for which we have vaccines. And I think it's probably the same in veterinarian world too, isn't it?
It is absolutely the same. Have you read, Rob John is an author and he wrote a book called Never Home Alone. Mm-hmm. And you would like it in that they basically, he's out of the Research Triangle in Raleigh, Durham, and they went out and they basically looked at people's houses, mostly their doorways, and they itemized the different things that they found in doorways, including bugs, but also viruses and bacteria, stuff that they could swab. And just this long list of what we live with on a day-to-day basis. There's just never, we're never going to be without those things because we need them in our environment.
And I remember Andy Wakefield said one time at a conference that he was speaking, and he said this may have been 2002 or 3. It's been a long time ago, but it stuck with me and I've used it over and over again, is when he said the human race has evolved because of its relationship with microbes, not in spite of its relationship with microbes.
Absolutely.
And I think it's probably the same with our domestic pets. You know, you develop a symbiotic relationship with the bugs that you're around. I mean, that's why Peter Abbey is a vaccine investigator, and they did this it's a really interesting study. It was just a couple years ago. It's pretty recent. That they came up with this premise. That it's like duh, why hasn't anybody ever thought about this? It was we go into Africa and we give all these kids DPT vaccines. Does anybody go back like 2 or 3 years later and see how they're doing? So he and his team went back to see how they're doing. And when they crunched the numbers, they found that the kids that had been given a DTaP vaccine, a DTP vaccine, which is diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis, were 5 times more likely to die than kids who were not vaccinated with a DPT of pathogens that were normal in their environment. So they 5 times more likely to have died if they'd been vaccinated with a DPT now they didn't die of diphtheria, tetanus, or pertussis. They died of other types of bugs that were in their environment they would have normally just had like a normal little infection, and because those were endemic bacteria and parasites and viruses to Africa. And it would have just been endemic to them. If they had an infection from it at all, they would have just recovered. But they were 5 times more likely to die if they had been vaccinated.
That's amazing. And it probably crosses over into the animal population as well.
I'm sure.
I'm sure that we see, we haven't documented it, but I'm sure that we see dogs, cats, even pigs, sheep, horses, goats, and cattle, who, if they've been vaccinated, have a higher rate of injury. There was a study, it was reported in 2006 at the American Association of Equine Practitioners, that horses who were vaccinated for rhinopneumonitis had a 50% chance of dying if they contracted the neurologic form of that disease.
Wow.
50% more chance. And when there was an outbreak, there have been a couple of outbreaks since then, one at a couple of big horse shows. So these are horse shows where all the horses had to have a health certificate to get there. So a veterinarian inspected them before they went, and then they're in a stressful situation and they broke with this neurologic form of rhinopneumonitis. Everybody was infected or exposed. And when horses left that show, several horses came down with it and died. And we had 2 instances where one was a consult client of ours who had her horses, she got them adjusted every day, and they spiked a fever, but they did fine after that. Another was one of our students who, in their practice, which was in the middle of a huge horse community where there are other veterinary clinics surrounding them, when horses would come into their clinic with symptoms of neurologic form of rhinopneumonitis, she put them on fluids as to treat the side effects or the fever, and she adjusted their atlases every single day. Not one of their horses died.
Wow. Wow.
And they never vaccinated anybody in their community, whereas in some communities the recommendation was to vaccinate everybody for the rhinovirus. And
which never makes sense to me in either veterinarian settings or human settings. I mean, if there's an outbreak, people have already been exposed. And so now you go and you give them a vaccine that takes weeks to develop an antibody. And now whatever the bug that was caught, measles, mumps, rubella, chicken pox, influenza, it's already come and gone. So that's gone. And here comes your antibodies behind that, which does nothing except you take on all the risk of the vaccine. And if you were sick, you take on even a greater risk of the vaccine.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today.
Oh, no, this is good. This is
Because I
really super good.